Stephen Grant stood at the living room window before dawn, but the darkness outside was nothing compared to what he'd overheard the night before.
The medical assessment is ready. Andrew doesn't suspect a thing.
The words were calm, rehearsed, the sound of a plan already in motion.
No, he's still asleep. By Sunday, everyone will believe he's losing his mind.
Stephen's hand went to his tie, straightening it with a deliberate mechanical motion. His face, usually kind, was now stone.
Brenda, who was on the phone at this hour?
No one important. You need to rest, Stephen. You've been forgetting things again.
Stephen said nothing. The lie burned in his throat, but he swallowed it. An hour later, Stephen drove toward the church. His hands gripped the wheel with the same force he used to hold his voice steady.
Not today, Melissa. Not ever.
The church foyer was warm with handshakes and coffee steam. But the moment Stephen stepped inside, two greeters turned their backs and found urgent business with the bulletin board.
We're all praying for you, Stephen. So hard to watch a strong man struggle.
Just last week, I heard he couldn't remember his own address. 40 years in that house.
Stephen's knuckles went white on the hymnal. He forced his feet forward, down the center aisle, past eyes that either pitied or avoided him. Brenda was already in their usual pew, scrolling through her phone as if she were waiting for a table at a restaurant.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine.
She's singing like a saint while sharpening the knife.
Sit down, Stephen. You're making a scene.
Around him, the sanctuary filled with murmured prayers and rustling bulletins, and beneath it all, the steady hum of a congregation choosing sides.
I have sung in this choir for 40 years, and today they believe a woman who can't even hum in key.
The truth will outlast every lie, but only if someone is brave enough to speak it.
For a heartbeat, Andrew's gaze landed on Stephen in the fifth pew. The look was not pulpit warm. It was a message. After the benediction, Stephen moved into the aisle with one goal: reach Andrew before the crowd closed in.
Pastor, we need to talk about Dad. He's been forgetting simple things, appointments, where he parked.
Melissa, the Lord honors patience. This is not the time.
He knows something. Why else would he block her?
We'll speak later, Stephen. Hold steady.
Before Stephen could answer, a deacon tugged Andrew toward a crying child in the back pew. The moment shattered.
Hold steady with what? My wife thinks I'm a ghost, and her daughter wants me in a grave.
He turned instead toward the fellowship hall, where coffee urns steamed and Melissa's voice already threaded through the crowd like a needle pulling poison into a vein. Stephen took a coffee cup and stood alone by the pillar, the bitter smell doing nothing to clear the memory rising like bile. 2 weeks ago, Melissa had appeared in his kitchen with a smile that never reached her calculating eyes.
Oh, Stephen, you left the stove on again. It's okay. I turned it off, but people are starting to talk.
The burner knob was cold. Stephen had left it off. She had twisted it herself just before he walked in.
She manufactured the crisis, then used it as proof, a loop of perfectly constructed fraud. Not today, Melissa. I know your whole script now.
He set down the untouched coffee and straightened his spine until the charcoal jacket pulled taut across his shoulders. Then he walked toward the cluster of voices where Melissa held court, her laughter like chimes over a rising storm. Melissa's rehearsed anecdotes painted him into a corner, but Stephen's steps did not falter.
I've faced choirs that fell apart mid-anthem. I can face a liar with a forged paper.
The circle of parishioners tightened around Melissa like a protective wall, but Stephen stepped into the bright center anyway.
Melissa tells us you've been forgetting where you live, Stephen. How brave of you to come today.
I've lived in the same house for 40 years, Mrs. Collins. I know where I live.
Now, Dad, don't get upset. It's okay to admit it. We all just want to help.
The murmurs around him swelled, not with support, but with sad, clucking pity that grated on his ears.
It's the disease talking, son. My own brother got defensive like that before the end.
The trap was perfectly set. Every calm word he managed only echoed back as further proof of their fears.
Brenda stood by the far wall, arms crossed, a spectator at a disaster she had scripted.
They'd believe a fake document over 40 years of worship. Nothing he said would change that.
And in the silence that followed, Melissa's smile flickered just slightly, a candle flame over a fuse. Melissa stepped onto a folding chair, her voice cutting the coffee chatter. The room fell silent.
Everyone, I need your prayers. My stepfather is very ill, and he's becoming a danger to himself.
Heads nodded. Women pressed hands to their mouths. The pity in the room was thick enough to choke on.
Last month, I found the stove blazing and him wandering the yard at 2 in the morning. He forgets his own name some days.
That's not true.
His voice broke on the words, and the crowd heard only the tremor, not the denial.
It's the sickness talking, Dad. You don't recall doing those things. It's okay.
Pastor Andrew appeared in the doorway, face a granite mask, hands clasped. He stood utterly still.
He's waiting for me to break completely?
The congregation held its breath, primed for the next act, unaware that the pastor's silence held a weapon of its own. Melissa opened the manila folder and held up a thick medical report, the forged signature bold at the bottom.
That report is fake. I've never seen that doctor, and I certainly didn't consent to any evaluation.
Stephen, calm down. The paper doesn't lie. A doctor signed it.
Stephen's hand fell to his side. The room wasn't listening to him. It was diagnosing him.
It's okay, Dad. We're going to take care of everything. You won't have to worry anymore.
Pastor Andrew didn't move from the doorway. His knuckles were white where he gripped his own wrist.
They've turned me into a child in my own home, and my pastor is watching it happen.
The crowd closed around him. A jury convinced by forged evidence, and Stephen felt the last door of defense slam shut.
Patience, Stephen. The truth has a voice, and it will speak soon.
The trap had sprung, but the hunter hadn't counted on another hunter, already circling. Melissa withdrew a second document from her folder. A thick power of attorney, notarized and already witnessed.
This just names me as your legal conservator, Stephen. It's standard, for your own protection. Do it, Stephen. We all love you so much. You don't have to be afraid anymore.
Every face in the room was fixed on him, but not a single pair of eyes would meet his own.
It's for the best, Stephen. Think of what Sarah would have wanted.
Andrew's jaw tightened, a muscle flickering beneath the silver stubble. But still he did not move.
Sarah would have seen through this scheme before I ever opened the front door.
His hand moved forward, the knuckles swollen, a tremor running through the fingers like a confession.
Just one more signature, Dad, and you can finally rest.
Across the room, Pastor Andrew uncrossed his arms, a quiet, deliberate motion, like a door unlatching. Pastor Andrew's voice cut across the gossip-choked room, and the pen stopped mid-flight.
That is enough.
Stephen's hand fell to his side, his breath caught between relief and fresh terror.
You will not sign away your freedom today, Stephen.
He's risking everything. Why now, after all this silence?
Pastor, you have no idea what's happening. He's a danger to himself.
Before anyone takes a pen to paper, there is a truth that has waited 11 years to be heard. Deacon James, bring the projection equipment to the sanctuary.
Andrew's hand locked onto Stephen's elbow, steering him through the crowd with the authority of a man who had kept a promise for over a decade. The congregation milled in confusion, their rehearsed pity crumbling into uneasy questions no one dared voice. The office door sealed behind them, and in the hushed light, Andrew knelt before the old wall safe, its combination dial cold under his fingers. The safe swung open, and Andrew lifted out a thick envelope sealed with crumbling red wax.
Sarah gave me this 11 years ago to be opened only if someone tried to force your hand.
She knew even then? She planned for this?
The sanctuary hushed as the screen lowered, its motor a hum beneath the shuffle of nervous feet. Andrew inserted the disc with deliberate care, his reflection ghosting on the blank screen.
This is Sarah Grant's voice, from 2013. I ask you to listen without interruption.
The screen flickered to life, a test pattern, then the soft glow of a living room chair. Pews creaked as the congregation leaned forward, 100 breaths held in a single lung. Melissa's knuckles went white on the golden buttons of her dress, her smile a distant memory. And on the screen, the image stabilized, a woman in a blue blouse, waiting to speak across the years. The screen brightened, then convulsed into static, a high, jagged whine spearing through the sanctuary.
This is absurd. We don't need a ghost show to tell us what's right in front of us.
Sit down, Melissa. The video will play, and you will be silent.
The static snapped to black, and for 3 agonizing seconds, there was only the hum of the projector and 100 held breaths. Then, as if a hand had cleared a fogged window, Sarah's image bloomed on the screen, steady, vibrant, alive. Stephen's chest seized. He had not seen her face this young in over a decade.
Hello, my dear Stephen. If you're watching this, it means someone has tried to take away what we built.
Brenda's hand flew to her mouth. Her pearls quivered against her throat. The congregation leaned forward as a single body, the air thin enough to spark.
I saw the danger years before anyone else did, and I prepared for it. I investigated Brenda's daughter, Melissa Vance. Even then, I saw the greed behind her smile.
Melissa's name hung in the air like a verdict. The color drained from her face until she looked carved from chalk.
If she ever tries to pressure you, Stephen, this video names Margaret Ellison as your irrevocable trustee. She will safeguard everything we built.
Mrs. Collins' handkerchief slipped from her fingers and floated, forgotten, to the wooden floor.
She was sick. She didn't know what she was saying. That video means nothing.
This will was witnessed by 2 attorneys. It is legally sound. The church has the original documents.
Deacon James stared at the screen, then at Melissa, his mouth opening and closing as if his voice had been stolen.
Don't let anyone tell you this was an old woman's confusion. Every word was recorded with a clear mind and a full heart.
Brenda buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook, but not a single person in the pews reached out to comfort her. The sanctuary held its breath, 100 pairs of eyes turning slowly from the screen to the stepdaughter who had just been unmasked.
Stephen, my love, don't let anyone make you feel small. You are stronger than you know.
Stephen's shoulders shook. The sound of his sobs, raw and unguarded, echoed off the stone walls. Andrew walked slowly to the pulpit and bowed his head, letting the silence fill the space.
The church has been used to try to destroy a good man. Let us repent.
Slowly, the congregation began to stir, whispers of shame and contrition spreading through the pews like a hesitant tide.
She was right there on that screen, still protecting me. Even now, Sarah, you never stopped.
Mrs. Collins bent to retrieve her handkerchief, her fingers trembling so violently she dropped it twice.
We will have a service of reconciliation. But for now, let this man find his peace.
Andrew stepped down and sat beside Stephen, one hand resting on his back in a gesture that needed no words. The sanctuary bells began to toll the hour, but inside the only sound was the quiet work of mercy mending a broken trust. Melissa snatched her purse and rose on unsteady legs, the mask of sympathy gone, replaced by gray fury.
This is a setup. That video is a fabrication, and you're all fools if you believe it.
The seal was unbroken. The dates and signatures are witnessed. Your scheme has no power here.
I think you should leave, Miss Vance, now.
You'll all regret this. Every last one of you.
She stormed down the aisle, her heels cracking against the stone like a gavel slamming shut. Brenda rose without a word, her face a pale slab of shame, and hurried after her daughter. Not a single person moved to stop them. The heavy doors swung shut, and the sanctuary exhaled. Stephen looked toward the door, his jaw set but his hands still trembling in his lap. The path ahead was unmarked, but for the first time in months, the weight on his chest was his own to carry and his alone to decide.
Stephen, I owe you a public apology. I believed lies and helped spread them. I was wrong.
The deacon's voice cracked on the word wrong, and the sound of it seemed to unlock the room.
We should have known better. 40 years we've known you, and we let a stranger poison our hearts.
You were deceived as I almost was. Let's learn from this and never let it happen again.
This Sunday we will hold a service of reconciliation, but right now, let this man find his peace. Please, give him some space.
One by one, the congregation filtered out, some pausing to touch Stephen's shoulder, others too ashamed to meet his gaze. When the last footstep faded, Stephen was alone at the altar rail, the silence heavier than the sermon had been.
She saved me. From the grave, after all these years, Sarah Grant saved me.
He rose slowly, his knees protesting, and picked up the hymnal he had nearly thrown aside. He would return to the choir, but not yet. For now he needed to stand still and let the truth settle deep. Andrew appeared at the altar steps, his footsteps a familiar soft cadence. He eased onto the rail beside Stephen without a word.
She called me the week before her diagnosis. She said, Andrew, protect him from Brenda's daughter. She'll come for him.
She always saw what I couldn't. Even when I was blind in grief, she saw.
Take this. It's her voice when you need it.
I'll never let you down, Sar. Not after this.
They sat without speaking, the silence no longer heavy but filled with a deep, shared breath. Sunlight shifted through the glass. Stephen traced the label on the case, the letters simple but sharp in his memory. From Sarah.
Thank you, Andrew, for believing her when none of us could.
It was the easiest promise I ever kept.
Outside, the afternoon softened into lavender. Inside, two men sat still, guardians of a trust that had outlived betrayal. In a sterile attorney's office, Stephen signed the final divorce decree. Brenda's hurried signature already stained the page. A judge's order followed, a permanent restraining order against Melissa Vance, forbidding any contact or approach. In another office, Melissa's lawyer told her the will challenge was dismissed. The video was legally unassailable. That afternoon, Stephen watched from the window as Brenda's sedan pulled away, boxes stacked to the roof. He pushed the envelope aside on the table and picked up an old photograph of him and Sarah, taken on their 30th anniversary.
You always kept your promises.
She planned for this before the first scan ever lit up. Sarah, you saw everything.
He placed the photograph and the DVD case side by side on the mantel, her voice sealed in plastic in memory. In the church garden, the roses were budding, indifferent to the storm that had passed. He would return to the choir soon, but first he needed to remember who he was without the noise. Sunday morning arrived bright and clean. Stephen lifted his choir robe from its hanger for the first time since that terrible day.
We saved your spot, Stephen. The alto section has been off-key without you.
This loft has been my sanctuary for 40 years. No one can take that away.
The organ swelled, and the choir rose. When the anthem began, one baritone voice cut through the sanctuary. Clear, unwavering, and strong. Stephen's voice spilled down into the congregation, rich and deep, filling the space that doubt had hollowed. In the pews, hats tilted back and handkerchiefs pressed to eyes as the sound of truth reclaimed its home. When the final note faded, a thunderous applause broke out, echoing off the stone walls like a benediction. Mrs. Collins clutched her handkerchief to her chest, tears streaming freely now, but these were tears of joy. Stephen bowed his head, his cheeks glistening with tears of his own. The silence that followed was not empty. It was whole.
She said I was stronger than I knew. Sarah, I think you were right.
Later that afternoon, Stephen walked through the old iron gates of the cemetery, a bundle of white lilies cradled in his arm. He knelt before the granite stone that read Sarah Grant, beloved wife, and laid the lilies against it.
I sang today, Sar. They heard me. And I heard you. You saw through her before I even knew. I wish you were here, but I'm so grateful you left that tape. She always said love was protection. I never understood until now.
He touched the stone, his fingers tracing the carved letters, as if he could feel her hand through the cold granite.
Thank you for keeping your promise, even from the grave.
He stood slowly, his knees protesting, and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The sun was setting, turning the clouds into ribbons of gold and scarlet. He turned toward the path. Stephen Grant walked out of the cemetery lighter, Sarah's voice still echoing in the quiet places of his soul. On a cool Saturday morning, the church garden was alive with bees. Stephen stood beside a young alto, her nervous hands clutching sheet music.
My wife always said, sing with your heart, and the sound will follow.
The young woman nodded, her voice already brighter for the lesson. On the stone bench, Mrs. Collins watched them, her handkerchief turned into a tiny waving flag of joy.
He looks so much lighter. Sarah would be so proud.
After the lesson, Stephen walked the young alto to the front steps, where the church signboard now read "Welcome Home." Those two words had sat on the board for weeks, but they still tightened his throat with a gratitude he couldn't fully voice.
Home isn't just a building. It's the people, the music, and the memory of her love.
He glanced back at the garden, where the roses still bloomed like embers of hope. The choir loft would fill again tomorrow, but for now, the silence was a hymn in itself. That evening, Stephen climbed the attic stairs. The dust motes danced in the last light of day as he pulled down an old box marked Sarah's treasures. He lifted the cardboard flaps, and the faintest whisper of her perfume rose from the folded keepsakes inside.
To my eternal song, forever yours, Sarah. No matter what storms come, I'll always have your back. She wrote this years before the diagnosis, yet the promise feels brand new.
He folded the card carefully and slipped it into the inside pocket of his charcoal jacket, right over his heart. A smile touched his lips, the kind that comes after a long cry, shaped by gratitude more than grief.
She's still here, in every note I sing, in every promise I keep.
He closed the box gently, leaving the other treasures inside. The attic settled into shadow, but the pocket over his heart stayed warm. As he descended the stairs, the last ray of sunlight caught the gold letters on the box. Sarah's treasures. They'd never fade. The organ's opening chord rolled through the sanctuary, and the choir rose in a single motion. Stephen lifted his baton, the same one he'd held for 40 years, and his face was utterly serene. The opening lines of Amazing Grace spilled from 100 voices, but one baritone seemed to carry all the rest. From the pulpit, Andrew closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him, a prayer without words. In the pews, hands that once pointed in accusation now lifted in praise, the air thick with redemption. Mrs. Collins pressed her handkerchief to her lips, her tears of shame long since dried, replaced by joy. The best revenge is a life rebuilt with truth, and Stephen Grant sang his truth every Sunday after. As the final chord faded, the silence was broken by a single, resounding amen from Deacon James, and Stephen, still standing in his robe, touched the pocket over his heart where Sarah's card lay warm. He looked out over the congregation, the faces of those who had wronged him and those who loved him, and smiled. It was enough.